Hello and welcome to this episode of In Discussion With from Pharmacy Update Online. Today I'm talking to Professor David Wright about the implementation of pharmacogenomics services in community pharmacy. So, please could you start by introducing yourself?
Yeah, my name's David. I'm a Professor of Health Services Research at the University of Leicester. But more importantly, I think for the audience, I'm a pharmacist, and I was practicing as a pharmacist till about 7 years ago when we had twins and decided that I could no longer be a full-time academic, a practicing pharmacist and a parent of twins as well. So I'm no longer practicing, but I'm still very much engaged with the profession.
Can you give us a brief overview of your role, what your current job involves?
It's a Professor of Health Services Research, and within that role, I undertake studies to improve how we deliver care to patients. And increasingly, it's about developing complex interventions, which are multi-professional. And I follow very closely, almost slavishly, the MRC, Medical Research Council guidance on the development and evaluation of complex interventions. So it's no more sensible in my world to have an idea, say, let's test it. It's called an ISLIGAT, I think. It was a good idea at the time, I think is the term people use. And those things just don't work. And I've realized that I've done a few of those. I presented at the RPS conference many years ago, the number of failures I'd had in different research trials. And recognizing nowadays that we need to listen to people. We need to learn from the literature. We need to sit down and co-design our intervention. And even when we're all happy with it, multi-professionally and with the patients involved as well, we then got to go and test it and feasibility test it. And that's the bit I really enjoy, actually, is because you're just trying it. You shouldn't harm anybody's result, but you learn a lot from it before you then say, right, this is the intervention, this is how we do the research, and then you go and test it in a proper randomized controlled trial. And all that can take 5 years. So that's kind of what I do on a research basis. My role is to manage a number of healthcare professionals, nurses, midwives, physiotherapists, operation department practitioners, radiographers, and now a pharmacist prescribing team. So I manage those courses and their delivery. And what's really interesting is seeing how those healthcare professionals are educated and trained compared to how pharmacists are educated and trained. So I can see that these things all link up. You know, we need to get our pharmacists set up right for the role. There are some education gaps very often, some skills gaps that we need to fill in. And then we need to get that right as part of that development process. So having that research and education background, they sort of work together very nicely.
Now, you've written very extensively about pharmacy-based pharmacogenomic services. And most recently, you and Tim Rendell had a poster at the FIP Congress. Could we start with a quick reminder about what pharmacogenomics is all about and why it could be important in routine patient care?
I have to say, this was something I thought was futuristic. And it was only a few years ago, a good friend and colleague of mine, Dr. Dirmabat, came to me with a pharmacogenomics test example. And I was laughing. So yeah, 10 years time, I'm sure that'll be fine. He's going, no, this is now available. Australia, America, Canada, and Holland. And we haven't just got it in the UK, and we need to introduce it in the UK. Then when I saw what it was, I was like blown over by it, really excited, because I'm someone who did a PhD which involved pharmacokinetics, and I thought that was the answer to how we prescribed and managed all medicines. And then pharmacogenomics is clearly the next step. And all pharmacogenomics is looking at someone's DNA to work out what bits are different, and therefore how that then affects how a patient's drug should be prescribed. It took me a while to realize this, but we prescribe for the average patient. So the BNF says the average patient will respond within this dose range with this drug, and this is the best drug to start with. But, 20% of people are either end of that normal distribution, and they're not average, and therefore they might need a different drug or a different dose. And what pharmacogenomics does is give us that extra piece of information to say, actually, they might not want this drug. This is likely to cause a side effect, or actually they need a high dose or a low dose, or you just need to monitor them more carefully. So it just gives us another piece in the jigsaw when we're prescribing. Again, improves patient safety, should get better patient outcomes quickly. But, and I thought, my God, this looks very complicated. How the hell do I do the DNA analysis? How do I make those clinical decisions? And what suddenly became apparent to me is that's all done for you. The software does the analysis. The software makes the recommendation. It says this patient's based on their DNA, you should be doing this. And that just blew me away. And suddenly realized, actually, why aren't we doing this as standard practice?
Mm-hmm. So could it work in routine patient care?
So I have another job in Norway as a clinical pharmacy professor. And I went over to Norway with Dear, and actually, as it happened, to talk about this over there. They just laughed at me, said, well, this is standard practice in GP practices. A GP can order this for any patient at any time. I went to meet the person running the national service, the PGX service, who was a pharmacist. He says, yes, they can order it, but they never do. And he says they order one test per GP, one test per GP per year. So what that told me was that actually this isn't something GPs want to take on. This is an additional workload. And actually look at the model in every other country, it's pharmacist delivered. So for me, this is a real exciting opportunity for pharmacists to take center stage, look after the patient, provide individualized care, and work closely with the GP. So it's no longer a service on the side, it's a service integrated into the system to enhance patient care.
Very interesting. Now I understand you've also done a study looking at aspects of feasibility for a pharmacogenomic service. Can you tell us a little bit about what this was about?
Yes, we've just finished a small scale setup and trial feasibility test of PGX, but it was in a mental health setting, not community pharmacy. But again, it was the logistics of it that were the issue.